This year has been a fantastic reading year. I am on track that by the end of the month, I will have read 90 books this year, which is incredible. So I have pulled aside my favorites of this year. They are not in any particular order, and I would love to share what my favorites of this year were. Hi, and welcome to This House of Walls, where I love to share anything homeschool, book related, and anything else in between. Today, I have a stack of books sitting here that I would love to share and talk about, and these are my top 8 reads for 2022. As of right now, I am on track to read 90 books this year, which I can't believe. It's incredible. And so I have pulled 8 of those books to just kind of mention as being my favorites. They are in no particular order whatsoever, but they were books that once I opened them, I couldn't put them down. And at the end, they were complete 5-star reads for myself. The first one to talk about is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This was my first book of the year, and I am so glad that I started the year with this book. I say that my books that I'm going to be talking about are in no particular order, but honestly, this might be my favorite of the year. This follows young Patroclus and young Achilles as they form a friendship and then a love for one another, and then ultimately go and fight in the Trojan War. It was beautifully written, and I just absolutely loved every bit of this book. My next is Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. This was for my in-person book club that just blew me away. I didn't know what to really expect from this book, and I loved it. This follows a young girl in the 70s, and this is a coming-of-age story as she is introduced to a whole different world than her very kind of closed-off church choir, cooking dinner at home with mom kind of world. And one summer is her world is opened up as she starts a nanny job for a young girl. The father is a doctor and has a rock star and his wife come and stay with them for the summer. So you can just imagine everything that goes on in this book. I loved it. I listened to this on audio, and I'm so glad that I did, because there's obviously a lot of music in this book, and it just made it come alive, and it was fantastic. Then we have my first Agatha Christie, and I'm so glad that this was it. I wanted to do Weekend with Agatha that was hosted by Angie and Chantal, and I'll link their channels below. So I asked my mom, what should I start with? I've never read an Agatha Christie before, and she recommended And Then There Were None. And I'm so glad I did. This is a closed-door murder mystery where you're just trying to guess the whole time of who's killing everybody. And it was fantastic. I loved it. So I have read a couple of her books since, and I'm so excited to hopefully continue some Agatha Christie books this next year. The next 2 books shouldn't come as a surprise. I am going to talk about them kind of together and separately, and you'll see why. Sarah J. Maas. I, of course, this was my first Sarah J. Maas experience with A Court of Thorn and Roses. I loved the world building. I was instantly sucked in and so curious of what is going on and everything. And then everything that I thought that I knew and loved in book 1, it changed and evolved, and there was so much more world building in A Court of Mist and Fury it was fantastic. I have since read the rest of the series that is released so far, and while I'm still fully invested in the series, these two were my favorite. They were fantastic. And then, of course, I am catching up on some of her other series, but these were great. The next 3 books were all recommendations from Megan's Book Club on Instagram, which I will try and tag below. This one, it kind of came as a total surprise. Never did I think that I would read a book about Bigfoot or love it, but here I am. This is Devolution by Max Brooks. And this is I guess you'd say another kind of closed door murder, where a very green neighborhood is cut off from the world as Mount Rainier explodes. And so they are trying to figure out how to survive, but then some killings start to happen. And it turns out that during the explosion, a family of Bigfoots were kicked out of their area in the wilderness and have fallen upon this neighborhood, and so are taking it upon themselves to get some killing in. It was fantastic. I'm so glad that I picked this up. I highly recommend it. The next book, Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I loved it. This is just one of those feel-good, makes you happy books where you are following Marcellus, the giant octopus, and an older woman that is working at the aquarium as he is causing trouble and being grumpy. But then it comes so much more into the story. I loved it. It was great. Some of my favorite parts from this book were from Marcellus. I loved his point of view. It was fantastic. So this is just one of those books that you pick up and at the end of it, you're like, oh, that was nice. And then the last book that I am going to mention is another one of those just feel-good stories. And it is Iona Iverson's Rules for Commuting by Claire Pooley. This follows Iona Iverson as she and her little dog commute on the train every morning and evening. She is able to observe the people that she commutes with and comes up with little nicknames for each of the people. But it turns out they are doing the kind of exact same thing. They all come together one time when one of the commuters, it chokes, and another commuter is able to come and save his life. And so this unlikely group of people come together to become friends, and just such a wonderful story, and another it makes you feel good at the end. So highly recommend. Let me see if I can hold these up. It is a big stack, but there we are. There's the top 8 books that I read for 2022. And I also can't wait to share my January TBR as I'm getting prepared for 2023.